want to get your guys' thoughts, and I'd like to share a couple thoughts about this activity. Okay, excellent. You're just like the class that we would try to model, where the problem is so interesting you don't want to stop and you don't want to listen to me. You just want to keep exploring. I love that. First, I just wanted to, I'm going to get your guys' thoughts on the activity here in a second, but I wanted to speak to kind of just this sort of atmosphere we're trying to create. So this activity, not a calculus-based activity for this particular group, but we thought this would lend itself really well to just exploration. You might notice it has a low floor, but a high ceiling. So you can jump in there and start to make connections pretty quickly. But yet you can keep making more and more discoveries as you go, and sort of, a question about what would 50 look like can, maybe really kind of give you a goal, but then you can go way beyond that too. It also lends itself well. Come on in, come on. It lends itself great, not picking on anyone, to students coming in a little bit late to class, because you can just fold right in. And we have folks coming in 2, 3, 5 minutes late. It works perfectly. Everyone's working, it's active, it's loud, and folks just kind of fold right in. Their group catches them up, and that's even good for those other group members, and everyone's just kind of going. So I would like to hear what a couple of groups, any discoveries, if we get maybe a few volunteers just to share one thing that they noticed about the patterns, or else might call on some groups, because I saw some amazing stuff. Any group want to volunteer one thing that they discovered? You just read it right off your sticky note, right there in the back. Yep.
The triangle shapes have circles that are multiples of 3.
The triangles are all multiples of 3. Love it. Dan?
We noticed that all the prime numbers form a circle.
All the primes are a circle. Anybody else notice anything? Make any notes about primes? Any other? Right over here.
Same thing that they said.
Primes are all in circles. Yeah.
The same circle.
Circles.
The 2 times the prime is like a circle with the 2s going around.
If it's a multiple of 2, but not a multiple of 4, so double a prime, then it would be the circle, but with the 2s around.
In general, the factorization of the number is how many shapes there are and how they're arranged.
Factorization. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay. Love that. Did anyone attempt, I know a couple of groups did, but who attempted a visual depiction of 50? I know you guys have your depiction of 50 there. That's easy for all of us to see. What do you have, like, a rationale for why 50 would be depicted that way?
It was based on what everybody has already said here. We looked at the prime factorization and based it on we noticed that the 1 through 10 shapes have kind of like a base shape that kind of follow through. So the multiples of 3 are triangles. The 2s, we noticed that with the 8, we're all straight. So we said, well, since it's made of 2, 5, and 5, we figured to be 2 sets of 5.
Very nice. Yeah. I see this group has a similar shape for 50. Very nice. Very nice. This group has a different depiction of 50. Interesting.
That's the one we went
You guys were exploring that. Do you guys have a rationale for that depiction of 50?
So what we noticed on here was that the largest prime in the factorization was the one that determined the circle.
Right.
So this one, the largest prime of 50 is 5, so we drew a circle of 5, but then replaced everything else with the 10.
So then we generalize the strategy number here.
Interesting. Very interesting. Very cool. Very cool.
We didn't have time, but the one that's 25.
Yep.
25 plus 25 is 50, and we just added 5 more around. We just made our own shape by doing, because there's 5 little indentations around it, and we just add more.
So that would end you with the same shape as that, I believe. You had one more comment? We'll make it the last one.
The overall structure were triangles, squares, pentagons, fourths, hexagons, but there were no hexagons.
Why would there not be a hexagon? Oh, okay, yeah, it's not permanent. That was amazing. If you guys want to go even deeper, A student and I, a week or two ago, we were exploring this and we started looking at multiplication and division with these numbers. So if you get, 50 divided, it's really fascinating. We won't get into that. We don't have time. If you want to go even further, start thinking about operations. Okay, give yourselves, did you have anything else to add?
The one thing I have to add is that, as you see here, you can transform any room into an active learning classroom. You don't have to have like perfect. We did not know what this room was gonna look like, whether it's gonna have table or rows or anything, but you just buy some sticky paper and markers and make it active. So don't let that stop you. Okay, cool.
Okay, awesome. Give yourselves a big awkward round of applause. And you can, yes, I love that. You can return to your seats. We'll continue. Thank you so much for your lively participation. I wish we could spend the whole hour doing this,
I know,
but we
right?
should probably say something. Okay. So here are some elements of effective active learning that I've implemented in my calculus courses, and certainly a lot of overlap with all of our calculus courses and Ann's course. But I found these 3 particular qualities make the magic happen. And if any one of them was missing, we'd still probably have a good classroom. But I really find that the 3 together do the trick. So I'm going to talk about each one of the vertices of my triangle to make an active calculus classroom: the seating, a minimum lecture, and open work time. So I'll begin with seating here at the bottom. Number 1, seating in groups facing each other. So we have rethought the way we do seating in our calculus classes, actually all of our math courses. A couple of years ago, we just had the traditional rows, kind of rows of students, just like we're sitting now. And we found, what if we tried a different dynamic with seating where we actually rearrange so students are facing each other, almost like a dinner table. And I found that just presents community learning. It's just natural. Students come in, they sit down, they're already facing one another. They can't help but to speak to each other. The first day of class is usually crickets, right? I'm standing up there, it's just completely silent. It's a room full of 40, 45 plus people, and we're just all dead silent. When people are facing one another, it's just natural to say hello. It's natural to engage. I found this is a game changer. It's actually a struggle to get them to stop talking, and I love that about it. Myself, I have decided that on exam days, I go back to traditional rows because it just lends itself to collaboration a little too well on exam days. So that's the one thing I've learned. I tried it, and it's just a little dicey. So people, are you done? Did you think that's okay? On a test, it's so easy to talk, which is a great thing on most days. So that's dynamic number 1, seating in groups facing one another. And let me just show you a picture of my classroom. This is earlier this semester. So we have these little desks that seat 2 people, and traditionally they had been just set up in 4 rows running across the room. And we said, hey, what if we just turn them and kind of put these back to back and have students face one another? So I have 42 students in the room right here. But actually, when you rethink the seating for the particular furniture that we have, it turns out there's actually more space to walk around. So not only is it community, but even myself, it's easier to engage because I can just walk right to anyone. They're not trapped in the center of a row or something where I can't get to them easily. And that's aspect number 1. Number 2 of effective active learning, a minimum lecture. So this took a lot of thought and a lot of rethinking what's important and what's not. But I found that a minimum lecture, the result, which was kind of a surprise to me, it communicates respect, that I respect my students. I respect their time and I respect their ability. What exactly does that look like? So I keep a lecture. I aim to keep lecture. I'm not always perfect, of course, but I aim for somewhere between 15 to 25 minutes at a time. So I'll be speaking and it's like, okay, we're kind of at a natural point. Let me stop. And then I'll get to the next point for active learning in a moment. But I found that 15 to 20 minutes everyone's comfortable with that. That works really, really well. When I designed that lecture, what did I have to do? Well, I used to lecture for 45, 60 minutes straight. I had to cut out a lot of things. I had to make it very clear and concise, and it was painful to me. I don't know if I'm the exception or the rule, but I wanted to cover every scenario, right? I want to cover every possibility so that they are in the best position to learn. That's actually not putting them in the best position to learn because they're not being challenged like they would if I made it clear and concise. Now I have to be very careful about what examples I choose and not choose, but there are certainly not major things, but there are certain scenarios that they don't see presented in the lecture. I've always heard that, you don't want to speak or make anyone sit quietly for at most 45 minutes. You ever hear that? Like 45 minutes is the longest anybody can pay attention for one time. And after that, you want to give them a break. And after this, I realized, why would I always push them to the limit? Do half of the limit, and then they're not exhausted by the end and it's a good time for a break. They're actually still fresh. So that is point number 2. By the way, I don't think I could make my lecture clear and concise in my first couple of years of teaching. I needed some time to figure out where I should talk and what things I should talk about and what not to. So it seems easy, but it actually takes quite a bit of experience. And number 3, to go hand in hand with minimum lecture and the seating, I give a lot of open time to work. What does that look like? It communicates trust. Again, not something I thought about going in. I just, I thought, hey, if I give them a time to work on their homework in class, that might really make things more interesting and fun. But I've noticed that it actually communicates that I trust in their productive struggle. I respect them. I trust that they can encounter something that I haven't necessarily done, that exact situation before, but I trust that they can push through that. And then they're also supported because that open time isn't out on their own, or it's not even outside of our classroom whatsoever. It's in the classroom, in that dynamic, with that energy, with that focus, with me, with their classmates. And it's an excellent time to engage and do productive struggle there. So I give them actually even longer than I lecture typically. I do this in intervals of 20, and usually I aim for 30 full minutes at a time. So I'll lecture for, say, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I'll say, okay, guys, let's stop here. Here are the homework questions that you can focus on that relate directly to this, and take some time with that. Spend 30 minutes, the next 30 minutes working at your tables. What do I do during that time? I circulate the room, people talk, right? It provides momentum for their homework. I don't know about you, and if you teach math or other STEM, I noticed that post-COVID, and maybe it's got to do to COVID, or maybe it's just a generational, Gen Z sort of thing. People don't want to do homework. Something about it, and they care about the course. They obviously do. But for some reason, they just don't want to. Maybe they do the homework, but they just don't want to even turn it in. You're like, okay. So what can I do to change my classroom that's going to meet them where they're at? Let's do homework in the class, and then they can, get a chunk done, and that they can carry that momentum. Hey, I already have this done, and I'm free to do more later, even with my classmates. I take generous time to circulate and speak to individuals and groups at length. I mentioned that, so it gives me a lot of time to just circulate. And we have those. I find those conversations are more meaningful because they're invested in that question than if I was lecturing. And so they've already struggled with it. Hey, we got stuck here. We're not sure what to do. Okay, let's go to a board and let's kind of work that out. Other groups are listening in, that kind of thing. And I've noticed that, if you think, all this open work time, are people really being productive? Oh my goodness, yes. It almost seems like that would be unproductive time. Just kind of do whatever you want. You want to work on this section, great. You want to work on something else, fine. You want to work on this activity or this lab that's due, later today or whatever. That is actually by far the most productive time because they are choosing it, they're invested in it, and the questions that come up are meaningful to that individual. So element number 3. If I could say anything else, I have another picture actually. So this is an open time from my Calculus 1 course 1 year ago. And so we had they were actually reviewing for the final, which was going to be the following class meeting, like the following week. So people are hanging out to do what they want. At that point, students are very comfortable working on the boards. So we've got a couple of people who prefer to do it that way. They're on the edge, and everybody else. What you don't see in the picture is just how loud and engaging the classroom is. And I have music playing, and they're just, they're all just talking. Hey, if you need a break, walk out anytime. Yeah. I saw a hand.
How long did you class?
2.5 hours. Yeah, 2 hours, 30 minutes. So usually it's come in, let's do something dynamic for however many minutes at the very beginning, then let's lecture a little bit, then let's have 30 minutes of work time, break, kind of rinse and repeat. And I've learned that open work time at the very end of class is not a good idea because they'll leave early. Right? So save a little, hey, I've got one last thing we need to talk about, and then they'll stick around. Couple other points that I found just really, besides the 3, really take it to the next level. Set the active tone at the start of each class meeting. Every class begins with a discussion, a discovery, or even open work time. So when they come in, they're doing something active, they're talking, they're working. It's not, hey, come in and now let's start lecture. But they're engaged right away. That could be anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes at the beginning of class, depending on what's happening. And a couple of ideas here that we could spend an hour just on or more on any one of these ideas, but just a few things you could try to introduce each day. Introduce the topic with a backwards design application. So give them something to do that's going to make more sense kind of later on when they see the full lecture. That could be anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes. During our seating strategies grant, we had a speaker come visit us and teach us about the 360-degree whiteboard introduction. You guys kind of got an experience of that when you were kind of working on these things around the sites. Quiz days, if I give a quiz on a particular day, I give them open work time at the very beginning. They're finishing up homework, they're talking, they're engaged. And by the time we do that quiz, now they're really warmed up and prepared. I do collaborative quizzes as well, by the way. Maybe at the beginning of class, they could correct a graded assignment. I might hand them back a lab or an activity. I've made comments and such. And hey, some of you guys did great. Some of you guys didn't do so great. Work with each other, and anyone who missed any points, take some time and make those corrections. And then you can earn full points back for that. We refer to that as mastery grading, and it's gonna speak more about that in a second. And I'm trying to wrap up. Okay, last thing I mentioned, playing music. Mellow or instrumental study music really creates a nice atmosphere. Nobody is that one person who's gonna break the silence. There's already music playing, and it sets a really, really nice atmosphere. Yes?
Could you give an example for the backward design application?
Sure.
For introducing a topic?
Yeah, let me think. There was the other day in my Calculus 1 course, we were learning about critical points. And I just gave them a couple of functions. I defined up on the screen, I didn't even say it out loud, the definition of a critical number. And I said, hey, here's a function, with a very entry-level polynomial. Can you find the critical numbers? And they took about 5 minutes, and they took a derivative, and they set it equal to 0, and blah, blah, blah. Said, okay, at the end of that 5 minutes, anybody, got the solution? Let's write it up. All right, it turns out that's going to be helpful for where this lecture is going. So something real simple could be, just a picture of something, and they're just, where are these things parallel, right? More concept-based even.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you give us an example of the study music?
Of the music. I don't know if I can pull any up. I really like, so I have a Pandora account, the cheapest one, no commercials. That's good. And I will play lo-fi study, lo-fi surf, kind of modern reggae groups. I don't know if you've heard of Stick Figure. I play them a lot in my classroom, and I keep it going even when I lecture. So I turn it up when it's open work time. I turn it down when I lecture, and it's not a distraction. It works really, really nicely.
For your groups, are they done randomly or do they self-select or?
They self-select, depending on the class, at the halfway point in the semester, I might have them sit with all new folks. But they generally, yeah, stick to the same ones, and I might just do that kind of for that one day, just to sort of give it a mix. But yeah, it's self-select, yeah. And I always find the dynamics, those tables they just work. And no one's ever in the middle of semester gotten up and moved. I don't know, it's always, it always works out. Yes?
Thoughts on the scale, like if you have a 700-person class?
A 700-person class?
Yeah, so
Woo!
community colleges are spoiled.
Yeah. We're capped at 45, so I don't think I can answer 700, like in person.
You can do the
That like
Yeah,
star
there
shape.
Yeah, there you go.
TAs, you guys have TAs though.
Yeah. I gotta move. Student performance, okay, has this done anything for performance? So this was, fall 2022 to spring 2023. That's 2 sections, 1 each semester. And you notice the distribution of A's, B's, C's, and D's. So this was traditional before we implemented any of these things. And this is my classrooms now with all those elements that you saw for fall last year, fall 23 to spring 24, where we had 73 students total across 2 sections. And you notice most of the categories, the A's, the C's, and the D's are about the same. What's changed? Look at the B's, almost double. And the F's, almost cut in half. So what happened? A lot of these F's got pushed up into the D's, the C's, the B's. A lot of the D's became, right, it's just kind of, there was this shift upwards. So our next, task to investigate, can we get the F's, as low as possible and get students more engaged? Yes.
Did you change grading strategies at all, or any distribution and points, anything?
The only thing that changed was mastery grading for what I refer to as labs. So they're assignments that go above and beyond homework, but not something I would put on an exam. So they can collaborate. So before I just had them turn it in, that was their grade, that was it. And now we do mastery. That's only weighted at 15%. So that's definitely not gonna account for that big of a jump for sure. I think last,
How about the demographics, I mean, groups, did you disaggregate them?
no, not disaggregated that. Great question. Yes.
Why do you think the percentage of the A's went down?
Well, I guess I would argue, a difference of about 3% with only
It's not that
66 and
much.
73.
Yeah.
That's probably just 1 or 2 students.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. Let me give it over to Ann.
I'm going to switch and talk more about mastery grading. So I do some of the same things Ryan does in terms of the classroom setup. Actually, we share a classroom. We're in the same classroom for our classes. The very similar thing with starting with active learning, trying to minimize lecture and so on. But I taught calculus to support. So this is the first, last semester was the first time that we offered a calculus 1 with support. Only 1 section taught by me. And this semester is the second time, again, only 1 section taught by me. So I'm basically trying to design this class. So to give you some information, first implementation of the course, there are no prerequisites for the students to come in. So I have a wide variety of backgrounds for the students. There are 40 students in the class. I have an embedded tutor to help me out. We used active learning strategies. So what I'm going to kind of concentrate is how do I implement this mastery grading and alternate assessment strategies. And there are like lots of different methods to do it. So I'll just kind of give you my personal flavor. But it amounts to, and I also gave frequent assessments with feedback. So it's not a class where I just give a midterm and final. There's a lot of assessments and continual feedback for the students. And I think that's a big part of it. So the big ideas behind the mastery grading that I implemented is the students are able to revise, they're able to retake, and I also implemented a portfolio of final assessment. Actually, the students had a choice whether they would do a portfolio or take a traditional final exam. So that was, I can share what happened with that at the end. So let's look at revisions. Okay, so revisions are on these take-home quizzes. So I give take-home quizzes, I think I had about 24 in total over a 16-week semester, so about a couple a week, except for maybe exam weeks. They each had 6 to 8 questions for it. I encouraged them to collaborate, get help from tutors and so on. So it's basically homework, but calling it quizzes, more of them do it. And basically they're set up like this. This is just like problem 1. But I give them a problem. I kind of connect it to what topic they're learning. I try to be very clear on what topic the problems are on. And then I have this little rubric right next to it. So they turn these into me and then I grade them right away so I don't get behind. And then I just, no work shown, incorrect method with work shown, correct method with algebra mistakes and correct. Sometimes there are variations, but each problem has this little box. And I will also mark, I'll sort of circle the stuff that I've done wrong. I might put some words in there. But that's kind of what my take-home quizzes look like. So the students turn these in. These are not flexible due dates. If they don't turn them in, I don't take them. So I have to I want to keep them on pace. So that's, let's see, did I skip? Okay. So for the revisions, if these 2 boxes are checked, then they could just revise by themselves. Just kind of, sometimes they talk to me, but it's just like, just check your algebra. They'll probably
Stay with your
talk to each
poster, stay
other.
with your group.
If the bottom 2 boxes are checked, then for me to take the revisions, they have to either meet with me or the embedded tutor. And those meetings, sometimes they take a bit longer, sometimes shorter, but it allows me to talk to the students and correct misconceptions, or they just don't know how to do it. So basically I see a lot of students a lot of the time. It's basically continuous. So I'm able to kind of see what problems the students are having with things, a lot of algebra, some calculus. But it's also I'm trying to teach them how to figure out what they don't know, what they're having trouble with. So most of our conversations are, okay, what do you think, where are you getting stuck? What do you think you sort of keep getting stuck on? Okay, you need to work on negative signs, you need to work on exponent rules. So there's kind of a pattern that develop over the semester that they're getting stuck on the same thing, and then throughout the semester, they keep working on those things. And then by the end of the semester, they're definitely kind of getting better and better at identifying what their weak points are and figuring out how to revise them. So those are the revisions. Retakes are for exams. So I give 5 exams during the semester. And students are encouraged to retake exams to improve understanding and grades. They can retake them no matter what grade they have. I don't stop them if they got an 89 and they want to go to a 90 some. That's great. So they have to meet with the instructor and the embedded tutor. I had a couple of students show up last week, kind of go, I want to retake it. It's like, did we meet? It's like, no, okay, then we can't do this. So they have a week to retake after I give them the graded exam. So I've tried mastering this before and I kind of oh, you can do it anytime during the semester, and that was a nightmare. So having that week, it gives them enough time to plan and study and meet, but it doesn't drag it, so it kind of encroaches on the next topics. So that week is pretty good. The students retake a different version of the whole exam, so it's not just the questions that they got wrong. Is basically they retake the whole exam. I actually have, my students test in the pods. I don't switch it back to rows because I write 5 versions of each exam. So, and I print them on different colors. So at a table, they'll get pink and blue and green and purple. So they're kind of sitting and they're getting a different version, and then the retake is on a different color. So, so the reason for that is, not just the collaboration, but they actually use each other's exams to study. So when a student wants to retake, I kind of meet with me, but I go, I bet the people sitting at your table, they have different versions of exams. So why don't you find somebody with green? Why don't you find somebody with blue? So they're like, start going to each other and kind of go, show me how you did that problem. Can you teach me how you did that problem? So they're sort of like creating this sort of collaboration without really forcing them to collaborate. They're just like using each other as resources. They could technically take the exam a limited number of times, but that's never happened because it's sort of not practical. Yeah.
Are the retakes done in class? And if not, how are they scheduled? Where do they take them?
So that's a very good question. We have a math learning center, a math lab, and it has a proctor testing area. Once they met with me, I drop an exam in my folder there, and they'll go and take it whenever the center is open. There's my counterpart at Mesa College. She does the exam in her class on a certain day. So because this is calculus with support, we meet with the students for 8 hours a week. So if I had to, could incorporate those on a day of the week and just do it that way. I thought that this would just, because it's there, it offers more flexibility for the students. Yeah.
If a student, gets a lower grade on the retake,
I take the highest one. So I make it like no risk. I really encourage it, like everybody to take it, to just improve, to relearn. So I sell it as like, it's not your grade, it's really your learning, right? Because you want to be very solid in these before we move to the next unit. You want to make sure that you have these solid. So I think some students do it for the grade, but I think by mid-semester, they kind of get it, that it's good for them to know the material. Okay. All right. So, okay. So here are some numbers, because numbers are always good. So this is from last semester. First exam, 38 students took the exam. I had 11 retakes. So the average score went from 77% to 81%, a little jump. What you don't see in there that, some students will most students will go up. Some students go up just a few points, but there are some students who go up like 2-3 letter grades. And those are typically students who struggle with math to start with. Students who are DSBS, they have learning accommodations, or students who historically they haven't done well in math. So I think this is kind of helping the students who really need it. Second exam, 38 students, 15 retakes. Average score went from 72% to 83%. And that exam is all my derivative rules, the chain rule, the product rule, all that stuff. Okay. So it's like they improve those. They know the chain rule by the time they get out with those retakes. Exam 3, 37 students, 19 retakes. I think this was a bunch of application problems. This one was a bit harder. You can see in the grades, optimization related rates, right? So that went up a bit. By fourth exam, I have 34 students taking the exam, 11 retakes, went from 62 to 68, and exam 5, not many because they're like end of the semester, like the week before semester ends. So they kind of like, okay, yeah.
so do you also give a final?
I do.
You write a lot of exams.
I do.
How do you find time? Because for every exam, you write 5 exams.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds daunting to me.
So remember, I'm teaching an 8-unit class. So
Yeah.
basically, it's just, I have time because this is calculus with support. I only have 38 students. I actually have a lot of time to do all this stuff.
Oh,
So, and usually I take my old exams and I just vary them, and it's sort of once they're like typed up, I just, okay, let me change the x cubed to an x squared, let me change it, or rearrange them. So it's like, it doesn't, It's not as daunting once you have the system set up. Yeah.
So I found my students are, good at memorizing, so I can imagine a student
Yeah,
getting all the versions, and spending time memorizing but not understanding.
yeah.
How would you, I mean, and how would you confident, I mean, how can you test or assess that they're not memorizing, but actually understanding after they take it the first time?
So
After
the retake is yet another version. So it's not one of the problems I've used before.
But they can take it whenever they, I mean, with you, they can come to your office hours or whatever, or at the Mount Proctor Center,
Yeah,
but can't that student say to another student, this is what you need to know if they, so you have the guinea pig going first and say what's on the exam?
are you asking whether like students memorizing the 10 problems that I have on the exam and writing them down right after? And then telling the other students? Possible.
I can see some of that
Mhm.
happening. I mean, we saw that with our, whatever. With the DRC, the student would take it earlier and then.
Right, okay. Yeah,
On the quiz, is that a paper quiz?
yes. Yeah, these are all paper. They have to show me all the steps.
For
Yeah.
the quiz, they have to revise the entire problem, the 6 to 8 problems you give, or?
Just the ones they got incorrect. For the exams, they have to retake the whole exam.
So what happens if the student works full time and can't find the time to go and speak with you, like my night students?
Usually, most of the speaking with me happens before after class. The math center is open.
It's not open.
It's open until like from 9 to 6 p.m. and on Fridays. And if they really need to, I'll go in at 8 a.m. and open it up for them and I'll proctor them. So typically we find time. But yeah, there probably are situations where the students can't do it because they work so much.
If I could just share quickly how I implemented this, all my tests have 4 parts, and they can redo one of the 4 parts. And since that doesn't take very long, I can have them do it in class. And I get, almost all the students retaking, even students who did well, that way, because it's in class, just the last 25 minutes of class. So that's worked well.
Yeah, that's the thing too, like I've coordinated with students that if, I have a class on Friday, if it's 3 hours long, it's a bit longer, that's kind of the support part. And if they can't do it outside class, then I just
Yeah,
schedule it.
and I have
there.
8 different versions, because I've been teaching a long time,
Mhm.
and if they did theoretically get all the versions and the answers, trying to learn that would be harder than just trying to do the homework. If they-
Right, exactly.
they do all the
So it's like,
Like being in a sorority or.
They've-
fraternity.
they've done dozens of problems to cheat on the exams, that's okay. I've done my job if
I like the point you said you have 8 units, so you can
Yeah.
dedicate more time than you would in a normal.
And this is why we're implementing this in the support classes and not in the regular, because totally understand that the instructors who are teaching these have just 40 students with all these hours for them, so yeah, I have the time. And I grade really fast. I have all the problems memorized on all my quizzes, all my exams. They're in my head. I just like.
You're your own chat GPT.
I need some AI grader. All right. So, so let me show you some of what happened. So kind of bad news, the F's stay the same. So this graph, I basically have my grades. The blue is with retakes. So what grades those students actually got. And the orange is what they would have gotten if I just kept their first attempt, okay? So the F stayed the same, but those students didn't take advantage. So those, maybe 1 or 2 students came in that category, came to take some retakes, but most of them did not. They didn't take the opportunities to revise quizzes, to retake. And I hounded them. I'm emailing them, I'm stopping them in the hallway, I'm kind of go, what's going on? And there's a variety of reasons. A lot of these students don't attend much, and it could be just because they have took way too many courses, have way too many work obligations, they're just overwhelmed with calculus. So there was a big portion of students who were not successful. And like Ryan said, this is what our focus now, how do we work to bring those students up? A's, not much change, right? As again, not many A's retook it because they didn't have to, right? But the biggest change was in this area, right? You can see that without retakes, there were B's and C's, but the number of D's lowered, the number of B's went way up. Okay, so in that range, we're making a lot of students feel a lot more confident and successful with math. So we're ending up with students who are kind of going into Calc 2 with a lot more confidence than they entered Calc 1. And again, in a course without prerequisites. So
The W is those who withdrew.
yeah, W or the withdrew.
How do students get advised for this course, or do they self-select? What's the process?
They can self-select. A lot of them go to the counselors. We also, me mostly, do classroom visits, like maybe in week 10 or so in the semester. And I have this chart with, this is all our math courses, and I give them like little chili peppers of kind of, if you take calculus online, this is super hot chili peppers. This is very challenging. If you take this, so we inform the students about the different types of class offerings that we have. Of course, we have a lot of students who are just coming out of high school go into this, so we didn't have a chance to tell them. So a lot they go through counselors or self-selection. Okay, yeah.
How big is the sample? Is this based on the same number?
Yeah, these are the 40 students, yeah. And
Classroom size, not that.
the 40. We're keeping the support ones at 40. Most of our classes are 45. I actually managed to talk my dean into 40 cap size for active learning classrooms. So for the instructors who are consistently doing active learning, I'm sort of going, they need more space. So I'm the department chair too, so it's I have a bit of a power.
What percent of your final grade is the synthesis of these exams? Relative to the final and perhaps a participation grade?
So this is the final grade they got in the class. So it's not the exam grades.
No, but how much of their final grade is those five?
Exams are 60%. Okay. So let me quickly talk about the final, because I know I'm running out of time. Oh, no, let's do some observations. So some observation, engagement during class is very high. So because of the active learning, but also because of the sort of revision retakes, it generates a lot of conversations around those take-home quizzes and those exams. So students work with each other a lot. Attendance is office hours is very high for me and my tutor, because they're coming in first for the revisions, but then they stay. They see the benefits of the math center, so they stay. Students who gave the most were the DSVS students. I'm checking in with all our Calculus 2 instructors, and the students are doing well. So it doesn't seem to put them at a disadvantage that they kind of got used to the retakes, and now they're going to class when there's no retakes, they're adjusting. So far so good, but I will check the numbers when they actually finish Calc 2 to see how it's going. Some observations, maybe some negatives. Notice like some students did not study as much as they probably would have for the first attempt because they knew there was a retake coming up. And I noticed that maybe for exams 2 and 3, but then they kind of get the point that they really need to study. So it kind of goes back to I'm kind of seeing more studying happening. Yeah, no F and W's. So besides the exam, those revision retakes, what other strategies I use to support my students? I had office hours in the math lab or in the classroom. So it's not like one-on-one with the instructor and student unless they need it. So basically, we're easily accessible and visible. So often we have these big long tables in the math center, and I'll sit down with a student or two, and then more come. So we have like a group of 10 or 12, and then they split up and they work with each other. So it's mostly like the students engaging with each other and teaching each other rather than coming to me. I can guide them, but mostly I send them over. He knows how to do that problem. He'll explain it to you. And I had lots of office hours, like 8 for me per week, 4 for my embedded instructor. So yeah, I spend a lot of time on this class. I have guests, so I'm trying to embed a wraparound support. So I have people coming in from career counseling, DSPS, the MESA program. We had a career panel event last week where we invited 6 engineers working in industry. And we schedule it during my class, so I could take my whole class over there and they can interact with these people. With the sort of, and I have intentional instructor around study strategies, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm a biology professor, so
Mhm.
lots of students who are taking
Yeah.
calculus. And you're talking about having engineers in your class, which is awesome.
Yeah,
The example you showed for critical points is pretty abstracted curriculum, so and it sounds like the exams are like, there's a right answer that you're grading. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering to what extent your curriculum has open-ended problems and problems that are contextualized in the kinds of careers that your students
Yeah.
go into.
so we create a set of calculus labs. I think we're probably uploading about 6 or 7 of them. So we try to do contextual stuff through these other methods of assessments. So as I said, exams are about 60% of my grade. Some of the other percentages, I think the labs are 20% of mine. And usually I give them different kind of contextual applications. I think one of the ones we wrote are on harvesting of fish. So it's like an environmental kind of thing.
So that's on the exams?
Not on the exams, on the labs. So it's more like collaborative, open-ended, kind of assessment. So I don't believe that everything has to be assessed through exams. I think, skills procedures is good, but then other kinds of learning can be assessed through, individual and collaborative kind of ways. That it doesn't have to be sit by yourself in a room for 90 minutes. Actually, my final exam, I don't have time to go through it, but I give them a choice. The final assessment is worth 10%, so it's not a huge amount. But they can either do a portfolio assessment or a traditional final. And the portfolio involves, let me see if I can pull up one of them. It involves them creating, they create a web page. And I give them some guidance on what they create. So this is one example. This is a student who was on a cusp of it was a C student most of the semester, but went up to a B. So I asked them to reflect on how they prepare for exams. What do they do after they get them back? How do they restudy? Then pick one of the labs that they did and talk about relevance and how they might use this in their classes in real life. Then they have to pick a section and make like a 10-15 minute video going through those problems. She made videos on TikTok, which is a lot of fun. And then they have to pick a word problem and make a video solution of that. So this is final assessment. About 3/4 of the students chose to do that rather than a traditional final. So I think I'm over, but I'm happy to talk to any of you after. Thank you so much for attending.
Please fill out the session survey.
Oh, yeah, I think it's also
If you do it through the app, you'll be entered into a drawing for $5.
Yeah, gracias.
But if you would prefer a hard copy, you do have hard copies.
Yeah.
All right,
Anybody want
there's
a hard copy?
instructions for them.